her idea.
Let's pray. Father God, thank you for a day of allowing us to come and worship you, to study your word. God, we thank you for just your promises in Scripture. God, we thank you for loving us and sending your Son to die for us, to be resurrected on the third day, and God, defeating sin and death. We thank you for that, and giving us a way that we can have a relationship with you, we can be in your presence, be your children. God, we thank you for that. That's truly a happy day. Today is a happy day. I know, though many come with worries and burdens, and we have loved ones that have graduated from this life, God, we can still, as believers in Christ, say, what a happy day, because you're living with us, walking with us, fighting our battles for us, and God, we thank you for just being our God. I pray if there's one here today who has not surrendered their life to you, that today would be the happiest day of their life. They would come into a relationship with you. So God, thank you for the opportunity to come to your house, to worship you, and God, we just give you all the glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Good to see you guys. I hope you've had a great week and anticipating a wonderful week coming up. School started on Wednesday, and so be careful as you get reactivated. The kids walking to school and driving in the morning. Thank you to everybody who was here Tuesday. We fed the school system, and many of you came out for that. Thank you for that, and had a great time. We're going to have a great day of worship today, and we're going to continue to greet each other. So let's stand up and let's say hi to someone around us. Or sometimes it's easy to misplace your Bible reading bookmark that we could. And I don't know, they may not have made it into the bulletin this month. So if you need a bookmark, would you mind, if you want a bookmark, if you're reading through the New Testament and you don't have your bookmark, would you raise your hand, and who feels bold enough to go hand these out for me? Here you go. Okay, raise your hand up high if you want one. And there you go. Yeah, you do it. Pick on you. Okay, if you see their hand up, give them one, okay? There you go. Thank you. Because every once in a while I call Linda and I say, Linda, would you take a picture of it and send it to my phone because I misplaced mine. So we're reading through the New Testament. We are, right now we're in 2 Corinthians. Well, actually we've moved into John, but we've been reading through 2 Corinthians. And today we're looking at 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7. And this is Paul. Of course, Paul is writing to the Corinthian church. Paul, an amazing man who persecuted Christians in his earlier life. He had an incredible transformation on the road to Damascus. Thank you guys for passing those out. He had an incredible transformation when he encountered Christ on the Damascus road. He had this vision and light, and Jesus said, Paul, why are you persecuting my church? That Paul was a Jewish man, and he was well steeped in the Jewish faith, and he was standing there the day that Stephen, the first martyr of the church, he was standing there holding the coats of those who were throwing the rocks, and it was called stoning someone. They stoned Stephen to death with big rocks. Paul was the one standing there holding the coats. He was named Saul, and his name was changed to Paul. But listen, he had a mission in life that he was going to eradicate the believers, the people of the way is what they were called. He was going to eradicate that. They were first called Christians in the book of Acts, around Acts chapter 11 and 12. They were called Christians because no one knew what to call these people who were following Christ. They said they were Christ-like, and the word turned into Christians. It's first used there in Acts chapter 12 when it's talking about what else do we call these people? They called them people of the way. So Paul, who wrote 3/3 of the New Testament, inspired of the Holy Spirit, he radically, his life was changed. Well, here's Paul writing to the Corinthians church. And we read through Corinthians chapter 1. We've read through Corinthians chapter 2. Today we're looking at Corinthians chapter 2, verse 12, verse 7 through 10. Paul is saying to the people, listen, God gave him a vision. And he talks about, in verses ahead of that, he talks about he was in the third heaven. Don't know if he was in there by the Spirit or by his body. And third heaven simply means this. There is not a place called purgatory. Some people will teach that and preach that. There's no place called purgatory. Some faiths believe that there's a place called purgatory, that when you die, you can go to purgatory, and then people on earth will pray for you and pray you out of purgatory into heaven. That's nowhere found in Scripture. And that's not what Paul's talking about when he's talking about the third heaven. Third heaven that Paul's talking about is in biblical times. They talk about the first heaven would be the atmosphere, where the birds, here, if you look up, you see the birds flying around our atmosphere. The second heaven would be where the stars and planets are. That would be the second heaven. The third heaven is where God dwells. That's what Paul is talking about a few verses ahead of this when he's talking about, I was in the third heaven. He was either in spirit there, body there, he didn't know, but God gave him this vision. And Paul's saying to the church, listen, I could get very proud about that. I mean, if God spoke to you and gave you a direct revelation of His Word, I mean, we can kind of boast up about that. But Paul said, listen, I can get boastful about that, but I'm not going to, because, listen, God gave me a thorn in the flesh. The spirit from the devil came to me and gave me a thorn in the flesh. Interesting thing about the thorn in the flesh, we don't know what it is. Many speculate, well, he had malaria. Many people speculate, well, he had a speech impediment. The apostles were saying, listen, Paul, you're a great man of God, but you don't deliver a very good message. You don't speak very well. I mean, maybe that was his thorn in the flesh. So some believe, based on Galatians chapter 4, that Paul had seeing problems. Because in Galatians chapter 6, he says, look at what big letters I use. In 4, he's talking to the church. He says, I know that you would pluck your eyes out and give them to me if you could. Some people believe that Paul was actually going blind. Well, whatever the thorn in the flesh is, we don't know truly. We just speculate on what that thorn in the flesh was. But Paul is saying here to the Corinthians church, saying, listen, I could be a very boastful person because God given me this revelation. God speaking to me. God taking me up to the third heaven. I could be very boastful about that. But Paul says, I'm not going to boast about that. I'm going to boast in what? His weakness. Listen, we don't live in a time to where people talk about their weakness. We don't live in a day where people brag about their problems. Listen, I'm going to a pastor's conference in the morning. I go every Monday, and I have a couple of meetings in the morning. I guarantee you, no one's going to stand there and boast about how little people they have. They're going to brag about how many people they have in Sunday school. They're going to brag about how big their church is. You go to the state level, that just continues on. Preachers just get there, and I guarantee you, there's some preachers who count the dogs and the cats outside and everyone around the building. But we had 900, I don't know what you had. Even preachers, they don't boast in their weakness. Folks, we don't boast in our weakness. And Paul said, I'm going to boast in my weakness. Why? Because when I am weak, God is strong. Amen. In your weakness, God can be strong in your life, folks. Whatever that thing is, it could be a sin. It could be a habit. It could be, whatever it is. It could be your pride. It could be your anger. Listen, whatever your weakness is, whatever is holding you back from taking that next step of faith with God, whatever that weakness is, God says, I can be strong in that if you just give it to me. What is your weakness? What is the one thing or the two things? Maybe it is a physical problem. Maybe you are having eye problems or hearing problems, or maybe you were born with a defect. Listen, when God created us, everybody, listen, God didn't make a mistake when He created anybody. He didn't accidentally go, whoops, I didn't mean to make that Nick Scott. Wow, what a mistake God just made. He didn't mean to do that. Now, we may say that. I love you, Nick. But listen, God never makes mistakes, and He never will make a mistake. It doesn't matter what defect that you may have and may have been born with. You're born perfect. God created you perfectly in His image. There's no mistakes that God makes. But yet what we do is we listen to the world and say, well, I just can't accomplish anything because of my defect. I can't do anything because of my handicap. I can't do this. I couldn't be a Paul. I can't do this. I may be going blind, or I may be losing my hearing, or I may have serious health problems. But listen, what God says is, in that weakness, if you give it to me, I'll be strong in that. I'll be strong through you, through that weakness. Paul said, I'm not going to brag on the things that God has done. I'm not going to brag on the number of churches we built. I'm not going to brag on the number of people who came to know the Lord. I'm not going to brag on anything. I'm going to brag on my weakness. Because in my weakness, God is strong. Let's look at it together. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, look with me in verse 7. Because of the surpassing greatness of the revelation, for this reason I keep on exalting myself. Let me start all over. Because of the surpassing greatness of the revelation, for this reason, to keep me from exalting myself, there has been given me a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me, to keep me from exalting myself. Paul said, listen, God gave me this to keep me from exalting, to keep me from bragging about myself, to keep me from thinking I'm better than other people. God gave me this. Look what Paul did. Paul said in verse 8, concerning this, I implored the Lord 3 times that it might leave me. Paul prayed 3 times, seriously prayed 3 times. God, give me better eyesight if that's what it is. God, give me better hearing if that's what it is. God, give me a better, maybe it was his past experiences that Paul was struggling with. I mean, Paul was destroying the church. Paul was having Christians killed. Paul was having them drug out of their house. I mean, Saul, who later became Paul, listen, he stood there when Stephen was killed. It could be that people were coming behind him, giving bad testimonies. People were coming behind him, destroying the works of the churches that he had helped start and build through the power of God. It could be that is what Paul's struggling with. But Paul said, I'm not going to boast in anything except for my weakness. He said, because God gave me this weakness. And I'm going to give that weakness back to God. And He's going to make it a strength of mine. Paul prayed 3 times and God said, no, Paul, I will not deliver you from that. You're going to carry that. Look at verse 9. And He has said to me, this is Christ saying to Paul, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is perfected in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, I would rather boast about my weakness so that the power of Christ may dwell in me. God said, Paul, whatever you're weak about, whatever you're struggling with, Paul, if you give that to me, I will make it a strength in your life. Man, some of us have tripped up and struggled with stuff our whole life. And we think, man, I'm not going to ever move beyond this. And God says, we can move beyond it. You can, but we can if you give it to me. And God will do amazing things through your weakness. God will do amazing things through whatever you say, God, here it is. God, I'm tired of trying to fix this. God, I'm tired of trying to deal with it. God, I'm tired of trying to carry this. I can't carry it anymore. I'm going to give you my weakness, God. And through that, I'll boast about you because you're going to make it a strength of mine. It may be finances. It may be whatever you put in that blank of your weakness, God can make it a strength. And here's Paul saying, I'm going to boast in that. What we learn from this, one, is that we are dependent on God for our strength. See, the problem with most Americans is that we think we're pretty strong people, and we are. I mean, my father's generation, that builder generation that many of you are part of, probably the greatest generation that America has seen. I mean, discovery and inventions coming out of that, and the car, and the computer. I mean, just think of all the things. I mean, that's a strong generation. You guys went through one of the worst financial disasters, the Great Depression. Many people have come out of that, and you may not have been a teenager in that. You'd be really old right now if you were, but I mean, your mom and dad, you're just directly out of that. Listen, my father won't throw a screw away. He won't throw a washer away. You go into my dad's shop and he's got bins and bins of screws and washers and I don't care what it is, nails. And I mean, I'm like, he'll find a bent nail and get a hammer and bang it back out to where it's straight. And I'm like, Dad, why don't you go buy another box of nails? And no, son, you don't throw anything away. He doesn't. I can go into my dad's shop. I don't care what breaks in my house. I can go to my dad's shop and I can go to a bin. He's so organized. It just makes me, my closets don't look like his workshop. I walk in and I'm like, okay, I'm trying to think of nail sizes. Nick, I can't, quarter inch, a penny, whatever, Here they are. I mean, he doesn't throw anything away. Now, how did I get off on my dad? Oh, the builder generation, the greatest generation. Listen, sometimes we think, I get distracted easy. Word. Sometimes we think, guys, we are strong people, and we are. But when we think we're too strong for God, that could be your weakness. Our pride. There's social pride, there's fashion pride. But spiritual pride is the worst of all pride. What are you weak in? What's your weakness? God says, if you just give that to me. See, what we learn from this is God is our strength. We have to depend on God for strength. Paul talks about this thorn, and he doesn't know we don't know what the thorn is. But yet he says, I'm going to give this to you, God. I prayed for you to remove it, and you haven't removed it. And you said you're not going to remove it. So God, you take this weakness and you make it a strength of mine. Just think of this. In biblical times, and even today, but I mean in biblical times, when children were 6 years old, Jewish boys, when they were 6 years old, they were to learn. They started learning the Torah. Now that's Genesis through Deuteronomy. At 6 years old, they start to learn this, memorize this. What the families would do is they would memorize this, and then once they memorize it, they would have a bat. Let me see if I can say this right. A bat sephira, okay? They would have this time of celebration. And at the end of that, the kids would after learning the Torah, then what they would do is they would go and learn whatever their family trade is, okay? So they learn this family trade, and while they learn this family trade, after they know what their family trade is, they would go back to a priest, they would go back to a rabbi, and the rabbi would say, okay, now that you know the Torah, I'm going to teach you things of rabbinical knowledge. And so the priest, or the rabbi, would take this student now that's learned the Torah, learn their family trade, and the rabbi would spend time with them. Now what the rabbis would do after spending time with them, there was a yoke called the rabbi yoke. And the rabbi yoke, and it's not a physical yoke, but what the rabbi knows, this small student would learn from this rabbi. This rabbi is teaching them knowledge. This rabbi is teaching them what they do. This rabbi is teaching them how they live. And so the student learns all that. In essence, the rabbi takes his yoke and he puts it on this young boy. Now the young boy's already learned the Torah, starting at the age of 6. They've already now learned the family trade. They go back to the rabbi, and the rabbi is putting his yoke upon this young boy, teaching him rabbinical ways. Now at the end of that time, what the rabbi would do is he would say, this young boy should move on, or this young boy should go back to his family trade. Because the rabbis only took the best of the very best. That's all they take. These Jewish boys going into rabbinical school, the rabbi, they spend a lot of time with these rabbis. And the rabbi says, I'm going to take this young man because he has promise, or I'm not going to take this young man because he just needs to go back to his family business. That's how rabbis are brought up. Now when Jesus comes walking up, he sees Andrew. What is Andrew doing? Family trade. See, Andrew is out fishing when Jesus walks up. And when Jesus walks up, he sees Andrew out there fishing. He says, come follow me, be a disciple of mine. What is going on with Andrew? Andrew was one of those boys that the rabbinical said, no, he's not worthy to be a rabbi. Then a rabbi comes by and says, come, follow me. Andrew drops his nets. He leaves the family business. He was overlooked by the rabbis. Well, what does Jesus say to you and I? He says, we are what? His disciples. We are to what? Go make disciples. Think of this. Whatever your weakness is, whatever your thorn is, do you realize that Jesus overlooks that? It says, you can be a disciple of mine. The world may overlook you. Your employers may overlook you. People, your family members may overlook you. They may say, there's no good in him, there's no good in her. They can't do anything. You may have a thorn in your flesh and you pray, God, please take this thorn from me. And then people around you say, well, there's not much I can do with them. But Jesus believes in you. God has faith in you because he looks at you and says, you be my disciple, now you go make disciples. In other words, now you go be a rabbi and you pass on what I've taught you to other people. God believes in you. God believes in us. The trouble is we allow our thorns to hold us back. Do you realize in Old Testament time, a thorn would represent, they would take thorns and when they were in battle, they would put a thorn in the ground showing how far the enemy has moved up to the other, how far that enemy has moved. They'd take those thorns and they would also shove those thorns through their enemies, through their chest, to kill them. And Paul's saying, listen, this thorn that I'm carrying around, man, it hurts like I'm being impaled. But I'm going to brag on my thorn because God said, I'll make that thorn, that weak spot in you, I'll make it a strength. So we learn that we have to depend on God. We have to devote ourselves. Because these young students, once the rabbi would take them back, he says, you leave your family, you leave your friends, you leave your synagogue, and you devote your entire life to me. That's what the rabbis do with these young boys. And that's what God says to us. Listen, you leave your homes, you leave your family. You don't, and He's not saying physically leave, He's saying all God calls us to do is you don't love anything else above me. You put me number one, uno, number one. You put me first place in your life. And you brag on your weaknesses. You let me have your weaknesses, and I will make them your strengths. But we have an adversary whispering in our ear, you can't do this, you can't achieve that, you can't go any deeper in your faith, you doubt, you don't trust. Peter denied Christ 3 times. And then on the day of Pentecost, he led 3,000 people to the Lord. Why? Because he admitted his weakness, doubting. He and Thomas, they doubted. And Peter says, man, I doubted. God, I denied you to this little girl standing by a fire. I was afraid of what people would do to me. I doubted you. I ran. I didn't hold up the flag of Jesus Christ. And now on the day of Pentecost, after confessing that, God uses him and he leads 3,000 people to the Lord. We must depend on God for our strength. Don't look to yourself. Don't look to your nation. Don't look to your political leaders. Don't look to your spouse. Don't look to your business, your employer. Don't look to anybody else but God for your strength. Amen. Because when we look to other people for our strength, we are disappointed every time. God says, what is your weakness? Give it to me. I'll make it your strength. And then the second point, as I've already been talking about this, is we are to expose our weakness. God tells Paul that in everything, in the very thing you're not good at, your weakness, your sin, your mistakes you make, I can give you power and grace to be strong if you just give it to me. Think of this, folks. Moses stuttered. David's armor didn't fit. John Mark deserted Paul. Timothy had ulcers. Hosea's wife was a prostitute. Amos, only training he had was farming. Jacob was a liar. David had an affair and then murdered someone. Paul persecuted Christians. Moses was a murderer. Jonah ran from God. Elijah was burned out. Martha worried too much. Noah got drunk. Solomon was too rich. Abraham was too old. And David was too young. And God used every one of them for His glory because they admitted their weakness to Him. And He made it their strength. What is your weakness? What are you afraid of? What is holding you back from taking that next step? Excuse me. They all exposed their weakness and they depended on God. And here, listen to this. We can be strong even when we are weak. Folks, we can be strong in our weakness. Whatever it is, it may be fear of people, it may be fear of retribution, it may be fear of man, whatever it is in our strength, we can be strong when we just give it to God. I mean, think about it. Isn't that an amazing thing? Whatever, I'm getting hot. Whatever your weakness is, and I don't know what it is, but whatever your weakness is, can you imagine that being your strength? It can be. The adversary continues to whisper in your ear. You can't do that. You can't move forward. God doesn't love you. God doesn't accept you. That's the lies of the devil, our adversary. And God the whole time is saying, I believe in you. Because I'm your rabbi and I tell you to be a disciple and then go make disciples. I see the very best in you. Just give me your weakness and I'll turn it into a strength. We can be strong even when we are weak. Well, believe it or not, I'm about to wrap up. And I know you're looking at your watch going, whoa. Let me tell you a story first. There was a guy who every day his job was to go get water. And he had 2 pots, 2 clay pots. Now this clay pot, man, it was a perfect pot. No cracks in it. Would carry 5 gallons of water. This pot had cracks in it. It was a little bit older, been used maybe, dropped a couple of times, had defects in it. So this guy carrying the water every day, he'd go down, he'd walk about a mile down to this river, and he'd put this one pot in, fill it up with water, and he'd take this other pot and he'd fill it up with water. Then he'd put them on the poles that he carried across his back, and he'd walk home with it like this. Well, this pot of water, this pot never dropped any water. But this one over here had cracks in it. And it would just drop water along the road all the way back to the village. And every time he got back to the village, it was half full. Well, one day, the pot, and this is an imaginary story, obviously, but I was talking. One day, the pot said to the guy, "I'm sorry, I'm not a very good pot. When you fill me up at the river, by the time I get home, I'm half full. I'm not a good pot. I'm cracked. I'm broken. There's nothing I can do." The guy that was carrying the water said to the broken pot, "You're perfect. Let me show you something." So he took the pot and he walked back to the river the same way he walked home for the last 5 times. Where you are, where the water dropped, he said, "I want you to look at all those flowers that have grown on this side from the water that you spilled all the way back to the village. On this side, there are no flowers." He said, "I want you to know that every day I walk along this road and I pick those flowers and I put them in a bouquet and I take them to my master's house and I put it on his kitchen table every day. He has a fresh bouquet of flowers every day. That wouldn't happen if I didn't have you. So you may be cracked. You may be broken. You may feel no use to God. And God says, I can use you. If you give me your weakness, the thing you struggle with, give it to me. I can grow some beautiful flowers from you. We're all useful. But Satan is just whispering in our ears, telling us we're no good. What is your thorn? What in your life is stopping you from taking that next step with Christ? If you just confess it and say, God, here's my weakness. He says, I'll make a strength out of it. And I'll take you places you can't imagine. I'll do things with you that you can't imagine. If you just trust me and let me use you. Cracks in a hole. What's your weakness? What's your thorn? Paul said, I'm not going to brag on my strengths. I'm going to brag on my weakness. Because in my weakness, God is strong. Father God, there's many in this room who are cracked and broken. All of us are. Sometimes we allow that to hold us back. God, we have an adversary who is whispering in our ears, doubt, causing fear. God, I pray that we would just take our weakness, we brag in it because we give it to you. We allow you to make a strength out of it. God, we're all cracked and we're all broken. Help us to bring these broken lives to you. Say, here I am, to worship you, to be used by you. Because when you look at us, you say, I want to be your rabbi, you be my disciple, and I'll train you, I'll lead you, I'll guide you. And you trust us enough because then you say, now you go make disciples. You trust all of us in this room to be rabbis to somebody else. But yet we allow ourselves to be held back. Because the adversary is full of this and lied to us. God, you see the best in us. Time is running out. Time is so short, God. We all need to be making disciples. But God, maybe there's one in this room who hasn't even placed their faith in you for the very first time. God, I pray they'd understand that if they just confess with their mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in their heart that you raise your son from the dead, the Bible says that they will be saved. Amen. And that they are to come and confess you. Because you say, if you confess me in front of men, I'll confess you in front of my Father. God, we are to confess you, not be ashamed of you. So God, whatever decision needs to be made today, I pray we wouldn't let the adversary, the devil, hold us back, continue to whisper lies in our ears, that we would make that decision today. And God, we would sell out to you. And we'd be like that broken pot. We don't know how you want to use us, but you never waste anything. So God, I pray that we would commit our lives to you, maybe fresh and new. So God, whatever decision needs to be made, would you give us strength and courage to do it this moment, this day. In Jesus' name we pray.